Hey, what's happening, everybody? Mike from Sanctified Rebellion here. Man, what a day I am having with technology. I tried to do a live Facebook deal to talk about public education and how much it sucks, and had all kinds of technical difficulties. Went through a whole like half-hour video recording, and it ended up being garbage because it flipped my video a certain way or whatever. So you know what? I am just going to stick to doing live stuff over here on YouTube and just posting it over on my Facebook page. Just makes my life easier. Don't have to sit there and fiddle with my little phone. I can use my webcam and my mic and put out some really good professional sounding stuff. So I'm just going to do it this way. All right, so today I'm going to chit-chat with you guys a little bit about the public education system because I think it sucks. I am a product of the public education system, and I can tell you, and many others, that it was a nightmare, not only in a social sense, but also in the sense that my learning was never challenged. But before we get into all that, my personal experience, I just want to make a case for what it is exactly I believe and what exactly I think about public education. I think that education is something that is the primary responsibility of the parent. I believe as a Christian that God in the book of, I think it's Deuteronomy, gives parents the directive that education is their responsibility. They are the ones to ensure that a good, solid, biblical, godly education is passed on to their children. Now that can take multiple forms, whether that's like a Christian school, private school type of deal, or homeschooling, whatever. I believe that our school system is the way it is today, which is in utter shambles because of the Department of Education. I believe the federal government has interfered too much into education and has ripped control of education out of the hands of the parents and has taken it upon themselves to basically take our children, future generations of Americans who are going to be running this country, and shove all kinds of progressive bullcrap through their ears into their tiny little brains and turn them into status robots who basically believe the federal government has the answer to all of our problems, that specific elites out there in the world have all the answers that we need to solve some of the world's worst problems. And of course, the government thinks that legislation is how you fix things, that you can legislate people from being evil to being good. Hey, we're having all these problems with shootings, so let's ban guns, rather than looking at the fact that banning the tool isn't going to stop someone evil from carrying out a murder. It's just going to make it a little bit tougher. It's not going to stop anyone or anything or fix anything. So that's not the right way to go about it. You can't legislate evil out of people. It just can't be done. There's only one person who can change hearts and truly destroy the evil inside of a person, and that's Jesus Christ through the gospel, through a new regenerated heart, the old man being put to death and the new man living in light of Christ and his grace and his goodness. So anyway, public schools want to take children and turn them into people who actually believe that the government has a solution to our problems. In order to do that, they have to undermine parental authority. They have to undermine the authority of churches and other institutions as a means of opening up the door for themselves and taking over those spots and being the primary educator, caregiver of a child's life, pretty much. I mean, think about it. Kids spend something like 15,000 hours or something like that over the totality of their young lives in school, in classrooms. There's no way that the average American parent who has to work hard to put food on the table and put a roof over their heads can compete with that kind of time in order to instill a biblical worldview, conservative values into their children. There's just no way. There's no competing with the federal government in that regard. Now, along with this, since the government has taken over education, the education system has just went completely swirly down the toilet. The quality of education today is absolutely pathetic. You have kids going all 12 years of school not even knowing how to read when they come out, or not understanding basic mathematical functions and things of that nature. So, the the quality of education has deteriorated. And is that really a big shock? I mean, anytime the federal government gets their hands on anything, they pretty much destroy it. They're completely inept. They can't handle the post office. They can't deliver the mail correctly. They can't educate children properly. And yet we want to trust them with healthcare. We want to trust them with our public safety. I mean, the list goes on. The bottom line is that the public education system is failing miserably. All they are doing is pushing out whole generations of self-entitled, spoiled brats who have no idea how to handle hardship, who know how to handle having their beliefs challenged, and how to function in the real world, which is quite honestly a very cruel place at times. So instead of future generations of leaders who are strong and who can carry the torch of liberty, freedom, and success that our nation's been built on, we have a generation of whiny millennials who want to run to their safe space anytime someone brings up an idea that challenges whatever belief they were taught in elementary school or whatever their hippy dippy parents beat into their heads. And that's just ridiculous. Our world has no future with that kind of leadership. So what's needed is an alternative. And the alternative is abolishing the Department of Education altogether, getting the federal government completely out of the education business, restoring control of education to parents and local communities so that parents and local communities are responsible for putting together schools. So in cases like that, the parents would work with local communities to set up schools, and there would be varying schools with varying, worldviews and different ways of teaching and different kinds of curriculum, and at different levels of affordability. And when parents send their kids to one school, if they find out that the worldview taught there doesn't match their values, they can simply pull the kid out and send him somewhere else where he's taught values that match what is being taught at home. And that is the way to go. In a society that's open like that, where parents have the authority and control over what's taught and who's teaching their kids, there's much more of an opportunity for Christians to create Christian schools, churches to build Christian schools, and so forth. And that's exactly what needs to happen if we want to see the fabric of our country restored to what it should be. The other option, which is the one that my family chose, is homeschooling. Now, I know there's a lot of people who are against homeschooling, even in the Christian community, even in the conservative community, because of varying issues. The most popular being socialization, because, nothing says learning how to adult like sending a whole bunch of kids the same age with the same life experience into a room together to try to figure out how to get along with one another without a whole lot of instruction. That just doesn't work. Socialization with peer on peers like that, like is what most people are talking about when they're talking about socialization, is a disaster. Why would you want your kid who is not socialized to learn from another kid who's not socialized how to socialize together? That usually ends in disaster. My personal opinion is to have a individual like the parent or trusted family member, grandparents, aunts, uncles, help teach the kid how to socialize by being around them. By a child being around adults, they learn what's proper, what's not proper, what's rude, what's not rude, and how to handle themselves as adults. Personally, when I've been around homeschool kids, they almost always seem more mature than even I am. And so I feel sort of almost out of place around them. Like, man, they're really like grown up and adult, and I'm just me, a 12-year-old trapped in a 33-year-old's body. And that's embarrassing, but I went to a public school. They didn't teach us how to act proper. They taught us the very bare minimum of being respectful to others, but I mean, bare minimum, and that's not to say that, my whole experience in public schools was bad. I had some great teachers in elementary school, and I went to a great elementary school in general. That was just awesome. And unfortunately, the way that they did school, can't get away with it today. So, I mean, they had a Christmas pageant that had Jesus in it. I mean, what does that tell you? So, in a situation like homeschooling, that's the way that I think it should work, is that older folks come alongside the younger folks, and socialize them so that when they do go out to be with their peers, they are already socialized and know how to handle different things that come up, different disagreements and things of that nature. Now, the other big one that I hear a lot from Christians is, but we want to send our kids out in the world to be salt and light, like missionaries for Jesus, to win over the unbelieving kids in their classes. Wrong. Just wrong. That whole thing about creating disciples, that's meant for mature disciples, those who have been discipled themselves. Your primary responsibility as a parent is to take your children and disciple them, to teach them the gospel, to teach them how to obey all that God commands in the word, to teach them how to be a mature believer. And then as they grow and make their faith their own and start applying what you have taught them to their own lives, then they can go out and create disciples. You're not to send your kids out into the wolves. That is just a really horrible, horrible interpretation of those verses in Matthew. The Great Commission is about mature disciples finding unbelievers and teaching them the gospel and then bringing them up in the instruction of the Lord. Right now, as a parent, your primary mission field is your kids. It is your responsibility to teach them how to do the things that please the Lord. And as they grow and mature, then you can introduce them to opportunities under your supervision where they can express their faith, defend their beliefs, and express theology in a way that is glorifying to God and that won't send them to the depths of doubt and despair because they don't know how to handle whatever situations may arise from their unbelieving friends and teachers at school. So that is just two of the big ones that I encounter all the time. The third one, of course, is, well, we have to have two incomes. No, you don't. I am a person who, my family lives on one income. I'm the sole breadwinner. I am the only one responsible for bringing in the bacon. My wife teaches the kids and she takes care of the home. So I make my living by writing and blogging. So that's what I do for a living. And I'm the only one working. And we have had to make a lot of sacrifices in order to make homeschooling work. We don't live in a great place. We don't live in an awesome big house with a nice fenced in yard and all that stuff. We don't have two cars. We don't take a lot of vacations or anything like that. We don't go anywhere fancy. We don't go out to eat a whole lot other than Little Caesars and stuff like that. So we don't actually have a very, what you would call, ritzy lifestyle. I make pretty decent money. I don't make the world's best salary, but it's enough to pay for our needs. And yet we made a sacrifice. Without that second income from my wife working, we've had to make some serious cuts to the way that we live and the way that we spend. And it's been worth it. It's been totally worth it. Homeschooling isn't just a choice of education. It's a complete lifestyle. It changes the way you live totally from top to bottom. Now, when we teach our kids, it's not just they have school for a few hours and then, that's it for the day. All day long becomes educational. We take opportunities to watch movies together. And during those movies, we can often relate it back to lessons they're learning in school time and whatever subject, history, science. When we watch documentaries together, those are educational. When we go on trips with our homeschool co-op, that kind of stuff happens there. They get to learn with other kids and go and see neat things. Education is, not just something you do for a couple hours a day. And as adults, we understand this. We learn new things all day long, every day. As adults, we learn constantly. That doesn't change. So what better way to go than to instill that kind of thinking into your children when they're young, so that as they grow, they it becomes normal to them to constantly be learning new things and to engage everything they come across as a learning opportunity. That's awesome. That's the way life should be. And I think it's great that is one of the benefits of homeschooling and one of the pluses to it. Now, the reason why we chose that route kind of has a couple of different reasons to it. Number one, I went to public schools, and I know the shenanigans that goes on there. I was a troubled kid, I guess you'd say. I was a rebellious teenager. Didn't really have a reason to be. I just was. I would sneak drugs into the school bathroom. I mean, I would smoke cigarettes in there. We skipped school a lot. Was hanging out with girls when I shouldn't have been hanging out with girls. And that's really what I got out of my public education. I didn't apply myself to learning, and a lot of my friends didn't either. There was a very small segment of the student body that really applied themselves to becoming great, to getting a good education, who actually took education seriously. That's just not the norm in school. So that was my experience, was, growing up in that kind of atmosphere and just getting in trouble a lot. I don't want that for my kids. Secondly, they teach from a progressive secular point of view. I believe it's my duty before God to instruct my children in the Lord. That means giving them a full orbed Christian worldview in every subject, approaching every subject presuppositionally from a Christian point of view. Mathematics done from a biblical point of view, history done from a biblical point of view, science done from a biblical point of view. I think you get the point. Because God created all things. He created math. He created science. He created, all the different subjects and things that we study, animals and stars and, dinosaurs and all that cool stuff. This God all created this stuff, and it reveals things about him, and gives us a deeper understanding of the Bible and how we're to live in this world in light of the gospel. So I wanted that for my kids, and they weren't going to get that at public schools. Heck, most of the time, they're not going to get it from a private school either. So we decided to do the homeschooling from that. Also, if you look at the statistics, and I don't have any up right now, but if you Google it, you'll see this for yourself. Statistically speaking, homeschool kids perform much better in testing and just in general in success in business and life and stuff, much higher than kids who go to public schools. And that has largely to do with the poor quality of education kids receive at public schools. In a public school, you got, maybe one teacher for like 30 kids. And, in a classroom setting like that, the kids who are advanced aren't allowed to work at their own pace and move forward in the curriculum or material. And the kids who are, kind of having a hard time and are struggling aren't allowed to take their time on the curriculum. They all have to move at the same pace. And therefore, those who are advanced suffer from not being able to just, move forward with their learning and really enjoy their education. And those who are struggling don't get the help they need to get caught up. And they end up feeling inferior and beat down and despondent and everything else. And there's nothing the teacher can do to fix this. It's just impossible. This is a systemic problem. It's a problem with the education system itself. And that's one reason why that, those kids don't particularly score well on tests as much as the homeschool kids do. Now, that's not to say that they don't score well at all, but they don't score as well as homeschool kids, and probably private school kids for that matter. So given that they would not get a high quality education anyway, we decided those factors were enough for us to make the move to homeschooling. And it's been a great blessing. I'll tell you, it has been awesome. We have had a lot of great family times together. Because of being a blogger, I get to work from home. I don't have to go out and work a job 9 to 5 and be away from home a lot or travel or anything. So we get to spend a lot of time together, and we have fostered a very close-knit family. And that's been such a blessing. Our kids enjoy being around us. We enjoy being around them. We get to spend lunch, breakfast, and dinner together. I mean, it's just awesome. It's such a blessing. And homeschooling is what's made a lot of that possible, obviously, because the kids are home all day. And we've had positive results from it. My daughter has a ninth or 10th grade reading level. She's 8 years old. She's got a higher math level than her grade level right now. My son, who's in kindergarten, is doing first grade math and all kinds of stuff. They're able to work at their own pace. So the areas where they struggle, they can take their time. And the areas where they excel, they can just go forward and move on to the subjects that interest them. And so it's been great to see their creativity sparked. They're very creative kids. They get to explore a lot of that creativity, and they're free, to learn at their own pace and make mistakes and not feel bad about it or feel embarrassed, of looking stupid in front of their peers and whatnot. And I just think that's been a great blessing. So personally, I don't recommend sending your kids to a public school. If you're a Christian, I feel like doing so is a violation of what God commands as far as you taking personal responsibility for your children's education. That's not going to make a lot of people happy. A lot of people are going to be ticked off at me, particularly on my Facebook friends list, um, who send their kids to public school. But I believe that's true, and I feel like I need to say that. And to those people, don't be offended. I love you guys. I care about you and your kids, and I want to see our nation restored to greatness. And it's not going to do that unless we, as Christians, say enough is enough. No more big government education. Pull our kids out of the education system and either homeschool them or strive to work towards getting education put back in the hands of local communities. That's the way we fix things. Our kids are the future of our nation. They are going to be the ones who run the show and take care of us when we're old. So I have a vested interest, as do you, in making sure that we have the best and brightest kids and that our kids have the best opportunities available to them to succeed so that our future stays bright for our grandchildren and generations on down the line. So, all right, guys, I just wanted to, do a quick little live chat about some of this stuff about education. I did a blog post earlier this week about a football coach who got in trouble for praying with his team on the field. And it just reminded me of how much I can't stand public schools, how they try to undermine, the values that parents instill in their kids, how they try to bust kids for, wearing shirts that support the First Amendment or the Second Amendment, wearing Trump T-shirts or Trump hats, getting in trouble at school for doing that, and expressing their religious beliefs in the lunchroom or on their own private time reading their Bibles. That kind of stuff is just unacceptable. And at some point, we as Christians have to stop sitting in the back and start getting involved and making some real changes. And that starts with a mass exodus out of the public school system. If we did that, if Christians pulled their kids out right now, I mean, it would collapse. And bye-bye public education, bye-bye Department of Education. And that would be one of the best things that could happen to our country, honestly. All right, guys, that's all I got for this one. I got some great content coming up here soon. Some posts about Harry Potter and engaging that from a Christian worldview done by a buddy of mine named Gabriel Green. That's going to be some really good stuff, so be looking forward to that. Got some great commentary stuff coming out soon and much more of these live broadcasts, so stay tuned. That's all right. For that. That's the danger of a live broadcast, right? That's all I got for this one, folks. Michael Cantrell from Sanctified Rebellion. I'll see y'all next time.